Okay, it says it's setting your meeting up. Oops. There we go. Okay.
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 Well, we can, I can see everybody live here on YouTube now. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Oliver. I'm the Visitor and Science Center Manager for the Fred Lawrence Whipple Observatory, part of the Smithsonian Institution's Astrophysical Observatories and the Center for Astrophysics, Harvard and Smithsonian. And welcome to the New Vistas in Astronomy lecture series. This season marks the 50th anniversary of our lecture series. We started 50 years ago with a half a dozen chairs in the old Amato schoolhouse. We've come quite a ways since then. Just in the last 2 years, we went from 250 seats with standing room only to 300 seats this year with standing room only. And now, for the very first time ever, we're broadcasting our lecture series live over the internet. I didn't know Trevor Weeks, who was a former director of the observatory and who championed our lecture series to the point that it could become a program that could last and grow over 50 years and reach a point where it could have a golden anniversary. But I suspect that he would be very proud of everything that we have accomplished if he were here today with us. Now, before we get started, I have a couple of announcements to make. I'm going to read some of them off. So if I look to the side, I'm not looking at my cat, sorry. I'm sure he'll make an introduction at some point today. But if you're not following us on Facebook, please do. Our Facebook is at facebook.com/FL Whipple Observatory. That's where we're making most of our daily announcements. And it's really important for you to be able to see what's going on with the observatory. Now, we are doing all sorts of educational programming right now to support libraries and schools all over the world, not just in Arizona, not just in the United States, but we're helping anyone who needs help. So if you know a library or a school that needs help from us, please email me at olivera@si.edu. That's OLIVERA@si.edu. Now, Ruskin's going to talk to you about International Dark Sky Association, and he's probably going to bring up International Dark Sky Week at some point. So I'm going to jump the gun and bring it up first. This year, International Dark Sky Week is going to be online, and we jumped right on board that train with the International Dark Sky Association. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's coming. Starting Monday, we're going to start a moon photography collection program. So you need to be in touch with our Facebook page to learn all about that program, how to submit, and what we need from you. Second, if you've heard of our Star Stories program, we have expanded that program. Initially, it ended on March 25th, but we've now expanded that and we're taking submissions on a rolling basis from anyone, anywhere in the world. So if you want to tell us your star story, just send 200 to 300 words about your first, best, or most important interaction with the night sky to whipplesciencecenter@gmail.com. So that's a different email from before, so we can keep the program separate and see everything that's coming in, okay? That's whipplesciencecenter@gmail.com. And more importantly, if you don't understand the importance of star stories, if you think back, the ancient Greeks, Romans, Mayans, Egyptians, Japanese, cultures all over the world protected the stories of their cultures, their communities, their religions, and even their connection to the night sky through the oral histories that they passed down. So we're starting with your written story, and then we're moving to oral stories too. So please join us. Again, 200 to 300 words to whipplesciencecenter@gmail.com. I promise announcements are almost over. The last thing I want to tell you is that we are not giving up on our April Star Party. Even though we can't have it in person, we're figuring out how to host that Star Party online. So again, keep up with our Facebook page so you can see how we're going to do it and how we're going to bring our presentation to you virtually at the same time as well. And now let's get on with it. You're all here to hear from Ruskin instead. Ruskin Hartley is the executive director of the International Dark Sky Association, a post he assumed in 2019. With more than 20 years of conservation experience, Ruskin has helped to lead numerous conservation efforts to save our Earth, including Save the Redwoods League and Heal the Bay. Ruskin hails from the United Kingdom and received his bachelor's degree from the University of Cambridge and his master's degree from the University of East Anglia. With an eye towards international protection and preservation of the night, Ruskin, like today, is always willing to do whatever it takes. Please join me in welcoming Ruskin Hartley from the International Dark Sky Association.
Thanks, Amy. Hopefully you can see that still. These skies have looked down on us over times of war, famine, and desperation, but they've also seen humans celebrate the longest peacetime Europe has ever known, inspired music, poetry, and art, and filled our hearts and soul with wonder, awe, and magic. To look at the stars is to know we have a past, but we also have a future. Hi, I'm Ruskin Hartley, Executive Director of the International Dark Sky Association. And those are words that were shared with me by Danny Robertson, a ranger at the Snowdonian Dark Sky Reserve in Wales, the United Kingdom, where I hail from. In these unprecedented times, few things bring us together like the night sky. Today, we're going to discuss the value of the night, how it is threatened by light pollution, and how you can take simple steps to ensure the night is there for all of us in these challenging times and beyond. For joining us on YouTube or Facebook, please follow along, ask questions so we can interact and engage. We'd love to take those at the end as they come along. We'll see time at the end for that. I often think that the night is more alive and more richly colored than the day. Those are the words of Vincent van Gogh. Unfortunately, too many of us have forgotten this and assume that the night is dark, when it is actually alive with light. Here's a photo that Babek Tefleshi, Nat Geo's wonderful nightscape photographer, shared with me recently. He'd been visiting Oman, an incredible country in the Arabian Peninsula that I was fortunate to spend some time in about 25 years ago. I told him when I was there, I visited some beaches down in the south where turtles came to hatch and swam in some bioluminescent water. He changed his schedule, went down and took these incredible photos. And for me, they truly illustrate what Van Gogh was saying. The night is not dark. You can see the bioluminescent algae in the water. You can see the stars above. That's what the night looks like if we let it. So the International Dark Sky Association has been working for more than 30 years now with a simple mission: to protect the night from light pollution around the world through the work of our network of grassroots advocates on every continent apart from Antarctica, working to expand the message that the night is something special and it's something that we can all do our part to protect. So the next 15-20 minutes, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about, what is light pollution? What is light pollution? Why should you care? And how can you help solve it? So first, what is light pollution? Put it simply, light pollution is wasted light. It comes in three main forms. Glare is maybe the most obvious, particularly now with the advent of modern bright LEDs. I don't know if anyone who's watching, if anyone out there has been annoyed by those bright white headlights in the new generation of cars. If you like them, put your hand up. I've yet to be in a meeting where people have said they love those. They cause discomfort. They cause our eyes to shut down. They mean that we really can't see. This is a photo I took last year in Washington, DC. It's colloquially referred to as a glare bomb. Actually, I was there again earlier in the year, and I sat out on the pavement and had dinner over the summer, and I could see perfectly fine because of the light coming from these glare bombs, casting lights into my eyes and up into the sky. The second is really about light trespass, and that's really about stray light. It's unwanted light. You can see here the light from this street light is arguably needed for the pedestrians on the side of the road, and for so when drivers come in, they can see pedestrians out. But I pity the people living in these houses. My guess is in the middle of the night, they could get up and they could read the newspaper without turning on their light because of the light coming into their windows. So we can really think of light trespass as a property rights issue. Do you have the right for darkness in your rooms? And the third is really the most complex, and that's sky glow. And sky glow is really the combined effect of all that unwanted light, all that stray light, all those millions of points of electrical light that are shining at night unneeded, shining up into the sky, shining off at low angles and many distance. Sky glow starts in cities. This is a picture of Los Angeles. You might be able to make out downtown LA in the distance and the lights of the 405 freeway there. Sky glow doesn't stop at the edge of the city that creates it. Sky glow can propagate hundreds of miles. It does not respect borders. So what? Why should you care about light pollution? Light is wonderful. Light enables so much of human endeavor. It's really transformed the way that we live and work, and is really, in many respects, a symbol of progress. So why should you care about light pollution? Well, for this crowd, I'd be remiss in not starting with astronomy. Since 1608, we've been gazing at the sky through telescopes. Each generation of astronomers has pushed our frontier of knowledge both forwards and backwards in time, and helped deepen our understanding of the universe and also what it means to be human. Light pollution is like throwing a veil over the sky and robs us of that understanding. But over the last 30 years, what started off in the astronomy community is now a much broader based movement. If you care about wildlife, you should care about light pollution. Many animal species around the world are active at night. 100% of bats, obviously. 90% of amphibians, and I was surprised, this 70% of mammals are active at night. Light pollution disturbs their habitat, disrupts behavior, and ultimately can lead to mortality for some of these. Here in Arizona, the iconic saguaro cactus is pollinated at night by nectar-feeding bats, birds, and insects, including this beautiful lesser long-nosed bat. I, for one, are looking forward to the spring, the blooms in the saguaro coming back and watching the bats flying around in the night. If we disrupt their habitat, we risk the future for these saguaro, for instance. If you care about birds, like millions of people around the world and millions of people in America do, it's one of the greatest national hobbies is bird watching. You should also care about light pollution. Birds are much like moths. They are attracted to light. They also use the stars to navigate. They become drawn into cities by sky glow, become disoriented in the bright lights, and sometimes can get trapped, colliding into windows that are overlit or getting trapped. As in this instance, these are the beams of light that mark the tragedy of 9/11. Well, now they turn them off every hour or so for 10 minutes to let the birds escape. It is estimated that between 100 million to 1 billion birds die from bird collisions in North America alone each year. Insects they're vital pollinators. They're the untold heroes at the base of our food chain. Scientists recently warned that 400,000 insects face extinction. Now, clearly light pollution is not the sole cause there. There are myriad causes: pesticide use, habitat loss. But light pollution is there. And light pollution, the scientists have noted, is one that's most easily addressed. If you move from the animal kingdom to the world of plants, plants are also affected by light. Clearly, they photosynthesize. That's how they make their sugars, by converting sunlight. Trees, as you see here, also affected. Those exposed to artificial light, electrical light at night, tend to bud earlier and lose their leaves later. And you can see in this photo, you can see the cobra-headed streetlight, and you can see its fall here, maybe off in New England somewhere. And some of the trees got the message. It's starting to senesce. It's starting to pull its sugars down to get ready for the winter, but under the streetlight, it still thinks it's summer. It's not just the plants and the animals. No, we're clearly part of the natural world as well. We have evolved, as Amy was saying, we've told some of our digital stories in the stars, and we as a species, as all our animals, have evolved with this reliable cycle of light and dark, the rhythm of the moon, the rhythm of the sun. because it changes throughout the weeks and throughout the years. And our bodies respond. That the night for us, when it is dark, is a time that our bodies rebuild. It's a time for healing. There's a hormone called melatonin that's suppressed during the day. At night, it's what makes us sleepy. It's also what sets our body to restore and rebuild itself. I said recently at a meeting last year in Boston, where the professor of sleep from Harvard Brigham Young University said, you know what? Humans are essentially as sensitive to light as cockroaches. Now, there are currently large-scale epidemiological studies from Spain and Israel that indicate that areas of high levels of electrical and artificial light at night tend to have worse outcomes in terms of some of the ills of modern society, like diabetes and cancer. We don't have the carefully controlled studies to say at what dosage and at what time and tease out what's inside versus outdoor light, but it's clear that light at night affects humans. But it's not just human health and wildlife, as Amy was sharing at the start. It's really about heritage of dark skies. Our earliest stories were told in the stars above, be those some of the paintings, I think it's Lascaux in France, or this in Chaco Canyon, where 1,000 years ago, the builders of Chaco Canyon aligned their structures with the stars. So losing our connection with the stars is really losing our connection with our history and our culture. Dark skies and tackling light pollution is also good for economic development. Around the world, particularly rural communities, are finding, how can we support our economy? What's special about where we live? This is an example I saw last year in New Zealand. It's Tekapo, one of the international dark sky reserves on the South Island of New Zealand. You can go stargazing and hot tubbing under the stars. That community, that remote community, has figured out that one of the assets, one of the values it offers to the world is a dark night sky. People are booking trips to come and visit with them so that they can participate and enjoy that, particularly from some of the Asian countries where light pollution is rampant. And if you're just looking at the hard-nosed dollars and cents, saving light saves money. We estimate in the US through somewhere between $3 and $7 billion is wasted on unneeded light each year. I'm sure we could all think of better ends to put those resources to, those funds to. And by some accounts, that's emitting 21 million tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So clearly tackling light pollution is good for our pocketbook. It's also good for our challenge of tackling the urgent global warming crisis. So what about the current status around the world? Well, we've identified what light pollution is and why you should care about it, but how are we doing? So it's clear that light pollution is a global issue. Many of you might have seen this map. It was put out in 2016 by Fabio Falci and others. They estimated that 80% of people around the world live under a polluted sky. Other researchers have estimated the annual rate of increase globally is in excess of 2%. In some countries, it's growing much faster. 99% of people actually in Europe and the US live under a polluted sky where they no longer has access to the Milky Way in particular. Now, in this time, one of the indicators in this global pandemic of economic loss is some of the cities in China were starting to see those lights dim. Now, that's been the history. When there's been tragedies, we've seen lights go down and lights go out. But there are also hopeful spots. We know from recent analysis that it's not a given that economic activity automatically tracks light pollution. Some cities and communities use light much more efficiently, and that gives us hope for the future. The other stat that really worries me is we estimate that only 1% of the people who live under a polluted sky know that they're missing something. This is a visual representation of what we're talking about. And it maps against the colors on the last map and the next map I'll show you. So on the left, the sort of gray and white, that's the sky from inner city. You can see, maybe you can see the moon on a full moon night. Out on the right of the map, that's a true dark sky site. They're very precious to you, those left, particularly where people are these days. And in the middle, you can see those transitional skies in the greens and the blues, those rural skies, those suburban skies, where in the summer, you can probably look up and see the Milky Way if you're not blinded by glare from a neighboring streetlight. So how does this play out in the US? So this is the picture in the US, and no surprises here. It essentially tracks where people live and where economic activity is. You can see that stark divide between the eastern portion of the US, where there's precious few dark sky reserves left. We're fortunate here in the West, where I live and where IDA is headquartered in Tucson, in southern Arizona, to have access to dark sky resources. You can see particularly up there in Nevada and Oregon and Montana, there are incredible dark sky resources, and it's our commitment in the future is to work with those communities to ensure that those places are protected while we continue to work in the cities and other places to restore and turn back the clock where we can. So to bring this right in to southern Arizona, this is a map of Tucson and Phoenix and the southern Arizona area going down into northern Mexico. It is really the Sky Island region, the Sonoran Desert. And you can see there that the lines on the map and the colors on the map there. So just to key you in, that the whites and the reds and the yellows, those are places where you really have a polluted sky, where you look up in the summer, you're not going to see the Milky Way. As you transition into the greens and the blues, that's where you have those transitional skies, where there's still opportunities to look up and see the stars above, all the way out to the grays where and the white at the edge of that's really where those dark sky resources are. So the challenge ahead is as the economy recovers and as our community and economy grows and population increases, can we manage our lit environment in a way to ensure that we don't swamp the rest of the earth with light pollution? Now, fortunately, light pollution actually has a simple solution. Now, we're called the International Dark Sky Association. We're not the International Dark Ground Association. We believe the simple solution for light pollution is community-friendly lighting. There's a myth out there that more light makes you safe. We want to bust that myth. The reality is well-designed light makes you safe. See what happened there? That wall pack, supposedly making you safe, was causing a lot of glare. It was causing your iris to shut down so that you couldn't see the stranger hiding there in the shadows. I actually believe that stranger, as Jean Beignet, is a champion of the dark sky movement. But it's a great example of one of the myths that we need to bust. More light does not make you safe. Well-designed lighting makes you safe. There's something you can do at your home, and it's something you can advocate for in your city. We've identified with our partners around the world a set of very simple lighting principles that we believe, if well applied, will ensure that we can have smart lighting and protect our dark skies. So we want people to be thinking about 5 principles and asking 5 questions. Really, is the light useful? Is it serving a purpose? Is it enabling you to get your groceries up the steps at home and not trip up? Be clear on what that purpose is. Is the light targeted? It should shine down on the ground, not up in the sky. The most egregious examples that are often banned these days are the searchlights that serve really no useful function and point light directly up in the sky, but it's all too often to have lights that are tipped up, not pointed down at the ground. The third is about the lighting levels. There's a chronic problem at the moment that we are overlighting our world. Even if you look at the recommended levels through groups like the Illuminating Engineering Society, most cities and most communities are lighting at much higher levels. We could have immediate savings in terms of wasted light if we simply follow the recommended practices. Light should be controlled. The advent of LEDs mean that we can now control lights exquisitely, both in terms of optical controls, in terms of where they're being pointed, but also electrical and smart controls. If you have a light on your house to help you come in when you come into your driveway, you can set it so it's triggered when you come in and will turn off 5 minutes later. That light doesn't need to be on all night. It's going to save you money. It's going to annoy your neighbors less, and you still have the ability to use it when you need it. Also, dimming. I had some patio lights so we can sit outside at night and enjoy the warm Arizona evenings, and I can dim them. I can hit a button, I can dim them down to 25%, and I can set a timer to make sure they're off an hour. The third is color. the color characteristics. And you can see in this photo, there's a photo from the city of Arizona, kind of the warm orange glows. Basically, light that is warm in color emits less short wavelength emissions than light that's blue and bright white in color. And why does that matter? First, that's a much longer conversation, but essentially, short wavelength emissions are more disruptive to sky glow, they're more disruptive to wildlife behavior, and they're more disruptive to human health. So anything we can do to minimize short wavelength emissions by choosing light that's warm in color is good for tackling light pollution. So the good news, here in the city of Tucson, IDA staff and volunteers recently collaborated with the city in a project to convert nearly 20,000 streetlights from old high-pressure sodium to LED. They actually chose 3000K LEDs. What was interesting about this project is how they designed it. They designed those streets, those lights to be very carefully tailored, so they're pointing down, they're pointing where it was needed. They were able to remove some lights. Those lights operate at 90% capacity until about midnight. And after midnight, most of them dim to 60%. This has done a number of things. They have had a 63% reduction in lumens. Lumens, think about that, the total amount of light that's being emitted. They have reduced short wavelength emissions by 34%. And remember, those short wavelength emissions are what's so critical for sky glow and for human health and wildlife disruption. We have some early indication, for instance, that sky glow at a distance has been reduced by 8%. And for the city fathers and mothers, they've realized $2.1 million in annual savings. They have also, interestingly, extended the life of their system, we estimate, from 8 years, if they're running at 100% capacity, to 25 years. So that's more like money in the bank for the city. So they wanted to share that there are good examples that you can do this in your city and in your community, and we want to see that scaled up to larger regions. The other thing you can do is really help us raise awareness. Really, part of the solution to light pollution is raising awareness of the wonders of the night. And this was me the other night. It might not look dark. It was getting dark, but these phones are pretty amazing these days. And so that's me with a simple telescope, a Dobsonian, so the kids can throw it around. I took Beckett there, my son, out, and we looked at the moon. He's quite a moon spotter these days. Even the moon's up in the middle of the day, you can look up and you can spot it before we can. I wanted to close with a simple quote, again, from one of our members that was shared with us recently in this moment in time. This is from Andy Gutierrez from Guatemala. The night sky gives us hope. It lets us see something stunningly beautiful during this moment of crisis. It reminds us how we are all connected under the same vast and wonderful night sky, working together as brothers and sisters to come over this worldwide catastrophe. So as Amy so kindly shared at the start of this discussion, we have an exciting opportunity coming up. International Dark Sky Week has been something that IDA has been proud to help coordinate as a global event for a number of years now. And traditionally, it's been our chapters and our dark sky places around the world coming together and putting on events for people where they can come together and enjoy each other's company under the stars. And clearly in this moment in time, we're not going to be doing that. But that doesn't mean we can't celebrate the night together. So we're launching the first global celebration of the night through virtual means. So during the week of April 19th to 26th, later this month in April, you will be able to join hundreds and thousands of other fellow dark sky supporters and champions in a series of incredible lectures that we're putting on and presentations, talking about the various values of the night, talking about new frontiers in astronomy, talking about the heritage of the night sky, talking about the artistic expression and interest that people can take from this. So go and check out idsw.darksky.org, sign up for some updates, give us some ideas for content that you'd like to see, and then put on your own local events. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruskin, for sharing these thoughts with us today and for helping us to better learn some of the lessons that we can all take from the night sky. And thank you to everyone in our community who stopped by, whether you're a family sitting at home watching together or you're alone with a cat like me. even though we're apart right now, our communities are coming together in a much more beautiful and amazing way than we ever have in the past. So even though we are apart, we are together in this and in our connection to the dark skies. Thank you for everything that you do, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks, Ruskin.
Thanks, Amy. Do you want to take some other questions, or?
I think that we can. I think if people have questions, I see that we have one on the YouTube channel from Doug Grinsberg, and his should go first. I actually asked you a question myself, but Doug asked, I don't entirely understand the question, but he said gratuitous insecurity lighting, important main questions, lighting, useful, targeted, low level, controlled, like motion sensors, timers, dimmers, proper color characteristics, LEDs, less lumens, low energy, reduced blue light. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, those are really
I think that's really interesting.
That's really the core concept behind it. Yeah, thanks, Amy. Those are really the core concepts behind the lighting principles that we've outlined. And this, again, is the International Dark Sky Association is not about saying the only way to mitigate light pollution is by turning off all the lights. We recognize that lights can serve a useful purpose at night, and what we really want to do is mitigate and reduce where absolutely possible, reduce to a minimum light pollution, so that we did minimize disruption of wildlife and continue to enjoy the view of the stars. We believe that when we're doing it right on the ground here on Earth, we'll be able to look up and see the sky. And so what does that mean? It means exactly what Doug was saying, and make sure that you only put a light that has a real intentional use. Don't just throw it out there because you can. We've all seen examples of lights out there that are in the middle of nowhere and don't have a use anymore. They need to be removed and ideally not put up in the first place. And the other, I would argue, this is actually a fairly complex area. And what we're learning more and more is you cannot consider any one of these variables in isolation. So you need to consider the suite of variables. Say that the given is all light should point down, no light should point into the sky. They should ideally point right down on the ground. And after that, you need to be managing the light levels and the color that you choose in a way to minimize, in particular, the total amount of blue light that's being put out into the environment. And that's what the city of Tucson was successful in doing. So they were able to reduce light pollution. And to our knowledge, no one in the city has really noticed.
Thank you for explaining that. So I have a separate question about animals and plants. So you had brought up animals and plants earlier. And my question comes a little bit more connected with them. And as light is pushed up into the night, right? So first I'll say animal migration patterns in plants are affected by the moonlight, right? There are plants that only bloom by the moonlight. There are animals that travel through the oceans, sea turtles and whales, they use the moonlight for that. Can you talk a little bit about, if you know, how light pollution impacts the ability of those plants and animals to use our natural sources of light? You know, we often talk about the moon as the only natural light pollution, but it's also a really important component of biology. And to me, I often see, having lived in really big cities, I know you did too, that even the moon can be washed out by big cities and big light.
That's what I mean. My observation coming new to this movement, as I did a year ago, is if you think about the natural world before there was artificial, particularly electrical light at night, the brightest time of year would have been a full moon with no clouds. That's about, we estimate about 0.3 lux. If you have the opportunity to go out on the full moon on an otherwise dark night, you will be able to navigate around very easily. You'll probably be able to read a paper if you have young eyes, you know. That's ample light to get around. So that was the most light we ever put into the environment. The dark days, the darkest times traditionally would have been when the clouds were covered. When there was no clouds, that was the darkest time. And we have kind of flipped that now. Most cities, the lightest time is when we have cloud cover and all those lights are reflected back into the ground, and the darkest time is when we have no cloud. So we've literally inverted the natural environment. The other thing I would just add is there's no such thing as a universally friendly, wildlife friendly light. Most animals are sensitive to short wavelength blue emissions. That's why warm LEDs and LEDs, those are the ones that have the minimal impact. But more and more, we're learning that every single animal responds to light differently. So I can't remember the precise names of the species, but there was a wildlife-friendly light that they deployed, I believe, in the Pacific to stop seabirds coming onto rigs. And when they deployed it in the Atlantic, it attracted the birds. So you really need to understand the biology and the behavior of the birds or the species in the areas that you're working in, and then you can start to design a solution to minimize the impact of the lit environment on the habitat.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. So we have two other questions on the YouTube chat. So how to tell the difference between good LEDs and bad? That's coming from Doug Grinsberg's. The Boulder area has so many harsh, high glare, bright, splashy LEDs. How do you tell the difference?
Good and bad. I mean, LEDs is one of my colleagues in the National Park Service refers to them as the frenemies. When they're done well, they can be really helpful. When they're bad, they're horrid. In general, IGA recommends that and for most uses, you should be looking for an LED of 3000K or less. And I would emphasize or less. It should really be start with the warmest color temperature. Warmer color temperatures have a lower CCT correlated color temperature measured in kelvins. So looking for a 2700K fixture, there's some 2200Ks out now. But then it's really about how that LED is used. Is it shielded? Are you able to see the glare of the fixture directly? Because the thing about these LEDs is they're incredibly bright. The intensity of those sources is what causes discomfort when you can see them. So if you're looking at streetlight LEDs for streetlights, for instance, again, look for 3000K LS 2700. There's some great options out there now. And make sure that the streetlight can have shielding options. There are still streetlights out there that are sold that you cannot put shields on. So ideally, you should be looking for fixtures that can be shielded and fixtures that can also be controlled. So like in Tucson, you can dim them.
Great. So we have our next question comes from user X80, and it is, what can we do on our own homes to reduce light pollution and to save energy?
Thank you, Exit. That's an exciting question. Actually, during DarkSky Week, we're going to be launching our home lighting assessment. We recognize that many people now are staying at home, they're spending more time at home, and we've had a number of inquiries. So what can I do to be part of the solution? So we're going to be launching a checklist and a simple workbook so people can go around and basically create an inventory of their lights at home. And we're going to have some recommendations for simple things you can do. So even if you are renting your property, there are some simple things you can do. It might be as simple as unscrewing a light that's not needed, so it's not turned on. So we're going to look for that during International Dark Sky Week. There'll be a simple guide, and then we hope that people will take it, they'll do the assessment, maybe they'll take a few simple steps, and then they can self-certify and get some self-recognition for being a dark sky friendly home.
That's great, Ruskin. And I can add to that and say, when you're talking about lights that are not needed, I haven't lived in Arizona that long, and I found a light switch in my house that I thought did nothing. And it turned out that it turned on outside light in this weird place that I don't need light in this strange place on the outside of my home. And so I had an electrician come in and disconnect the light and take it off the house so that if I ever accidentally turn it on, it's not on at night. And so I think that's really important to know, what lights do you actually need, and where are they positioned and what are they doing? And that light happened to be unshielded. I never even noticed it was there. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. And so we have a number of other questions coming in. So Cynthia Shelton is asking, can you, and you may not be able to, this is more of a question about hydroponics almost. So can you speak to the difference for plants grown under hydroponic grow lights versus sunlight? Do veggies care? So
great
question.
Some
plants care. Do
Great question. I have an anecdotal story from a former colleague, and then I have a more serious comment. So I had a colleague that I'd worked with at actually Save the Redwoods League was a number of years ago talking about how he was working with some manufacturers to tune the spectrum of various growing lights to different regions of the world. So if you wanted a tomato that tasted like it was grown in Italy, you could have the signature of sunlight from Italy, which is different to the signature of sunlight from another part of the world. So I don't know if vegetables care, but I think light is clearly an underrated part of our environment. More seriously, and there's a question about grow lights. Actually, the answer is clearly yes. Any light that is shining into the outdoors has the potential to create light pollution. Traditionally, IDA has been very focused on outdoor lights. We have seen a rapid increase in complaints and inquiries about hydroponics and greenhouse grows. And these are driven by two things. It's like we all love those boxes of leafy greens that are grown near our cities, and the growing kind of legalization at a state level of marijuana has led to real innovation in hydroponics and grow technology. There was an example from Northern Arizona recently where people might have seen of the light of the sky literally purple because of these UV lights that were left on all night. That is absolutely a form of pollution. And a couple comments there. It's like, it's serving no useful purpose. You know, the light's shooting up into the sky, it's not going down on the plants. And plants actually, like people, actually like to have some dark. They like some dark during the day to recover, so they don't even need light 24/7. So that's an area that we're actively looking into to provide some simple guidance. The simplest guidance for greenhouse growers at night, if you're going to have the lights on, you should pull some mylar blinds over or something like that so the light stays where it's needed and not going directly up into the sky.
That's great. All right, so it looks like we had one other question, but Doug has answered it himself. So if anybody else has additional questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat right now. Otherwise, we'll let Ruskin make any last remarks that he has, and then we will say goodbye to you for now.
No, I just thank everyone for joining us on a Saturday morning or Saturday evening or Sunday, wherever you are in the world. This is a growing global movement, and we're really excited to use this really unprecedented time as a way to look at how we can use the night to bring people back together. We're learning from a lot of people how much solace they find in looking up at the sky and feeling connected. And I think it's important, as we're all battling this terrible virus, to remember that nature has some tiny pieces, and nature is also as big as the wonders of the universe that we get to see when we look up into an unpolluted sky. So thanks for inviting me, Amy, and thanks to everyone for participating.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, we do have one last question.
Oh.
You want to answer it? Is the sensitivity to blue-white light in animals related to the color of our sun?
That's a great question.
That might go back to the question about plants.
My understanding is yes. I mean, all plants and animals live under that environment. I have seen some studies recently that suggest it actually goes back very deep. It goes back to the time that we're all living in the oceans, and it's those wavelengths that propagate furthest in the ocean. Those are the ones that we're sensitive to. So yeah, we're part of nature, and for millennia, the light that we lived under was the light of the sun and other unusual things like bioluminescence, but that's what we're used to, and that's what all human systems are keyed into, and that's why we're exquisitely sensitive to it. And it's not that we don't need blue light. We need short wavelength emissions. It's what gets us going in the morning. It's tough, growing up in England when it was dark at 7:30 in the morning when you're going to school. It's really tough. Much easier to get up and get going when it's a bright sun above. So yeah, we need light. And I'll end with this, and from the sleep doctor in Boston. Actually, if you think about what we've done to ourselves as humans, we have locked ourselves inside during the day and lost access to the bright sun, and we've locked ourselves inside at night, and we look at our phones. So at night we have too much short wavelength light, too much artificial light, and during the day we have too little bright, natural light. So one of the things you can do to help your body and your immune system is both think about the ways that you're using light at night in your home and around your home, but also get out and enjoy the sunshine, even if it's just sitting on your balcony for a few hours a day, or working in the garden. That natural light, sunlight during the day is critical to our health and well-being. Great question to end on. Thank you, Amy.
Great. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you all again soon.
Okay.